Welcome to our video series on homeschooling. Our idea with this is to give people both experienced homeschoolers or long-term homeschoolers, or people who are just homeschooling for a short period of time because of COVID or a job change or a family illness. We hope to provide information that will help your homeschooling journey be more joyous and more positive for all of these groups. And hopefully in the spirit of just really proving that homeschooling works and telling you a little bit about ourselves, we're going to just give you a little background. Hopefully it doesn't sound like a big brag fest. Homeschooling works, and so you probably know a lot of homeschooling mothers that are very enthusiastic to tell you, like, this is what happened. I have 9 children. I am a teacher by trade. I'm a certified teacher. I have education degrees, but I actually have a degree in something else too. But the thing that really brought me to homeschooling was wanting to have more time with my children and believing that the experience of education together could be a joyful, positive, high-level experience. I felt convinced that the stereotypes about homeschooling turning out the exact same, average person were just not true. And now, happily for you, you're homeschooling in an age where you have lots of people who can say yes, and the proof is in the pudding. So my 4 children, my 4 oldest children are my biological children. They have all either completed a 4-year degree or in some cases a graduate degree or are in graduate programs right now. They've all married wonderful spouses. It's not true that no one wants to have any social experience when you're homeschooled. And they've all done really well. So I have a son who is, and this is a really important thing to think about, is one of my children is 30, but the rest of them are less than 30. So try to keep that in mind so that I can brag just really effectively about how well they're doing. So one of them is a manager at a pharmaceutical company of 40 people. One of them is right now at Columbia Law School, and he is taking a job with a top 10 law firm. Both of these things are really pretty hard to pull off. Another one of my children is actually, even though he's 27, is a vice president and the chief of staff at Gordon College. My daughter graduated from Middlebury and then did her graduate work at Amherst, Mass. And she is an award-winning Latin teacher, which I get a real kick out of because I am not a classical homeschooler, but just another example of how homeschooling allows children to absolutely follow their own passions. So you already get the idea, like, you can do with homeschooling many different things. You can train up children who are happy to take their passions with them and just run. As proud as I am of those children, I'm really proud of them. I am probably more proud of my 5 younger children. My 5 younger children are all adopted. They're all considered hard to place, or children that less than ideal outcomes were expected from, if you will. They also, none of them spoke English when I got them. I adopted children from ages 2 up to 14. So most of them I adopted like right around 4. So of these children, they are all either in college or done with college, and they have picked really diverse paths as well. I have a daughter about to graduate from a 4-year computer science program at Gordon. I have a daughter who has a degree in something else but is now training to be a plumber. I have another daughter in education. I have a son, 2 sons right now at Gordon College, and one is studying graphic design and one is in pre-med. So all of these things can be possible with homeschooling. Homeschooling works. And I think that a thing that people don't always think about is how well it works for a variety of different children, both children that maybe people would have considered gifted and children that people weren't too sure what the outcome was for. That one-on-one tension, that love that a parent can give, that idea that you both are passionately going towards a goal together, this love of learning and this love of life, and is just something that you can't beat. I'm very enthusiastic about it. Homeschooling can make anything work that a school can. And it doesn't mean that school isn't the best solution for some people, but it's just not true that homeschooling is in some way inferior. So I have run homeschooling programs, two smaller ones of 20 or so kids in my home, but also two very large ones, including for the last, well, not anymore, but for 13 years, Hudson Valley Consortium, which has 200 kids in it and offers many different classes. So when we are giving you our spiels, our talks, they're based not just on our own children, but also on the thousands of children that have come through the doors of our homeschooling program and the families that we've counseled. My thoughts on homeschooling are based on my own experience, but they're also with my children, but they're also based on the way I set up these homeschool programs to be open-ended, higher level thinking, diverse situations. So I hope that these videos that we're making will be helpful to you, that this sort of little pieces of wisdom that we've gathered along the way can really help make your journey, however long it is, joyful and positive, full of mutual respect. And that joy that comes at the end when this journey together, where you were building these relationships with your children, helping your children to become, the most self-actualized person that they could be, pays off. If you will, my greatest joy is the fact that I put this time into the relationship with my children, into learning with my children, and I get back thousandfold with now the relationships with my adult children that I was hoping for. There is a really special bond that gets developed in this process of learning and living together. And now I want you to hear from my wonderful, fabulous, brilliant friend, Renee.
Thank you, Helen. So I've been homeschooling since my oldest son is 21 now. We've been homeschooling all the way through kindergarten. I have 7 children. He's the oldest. We know that homeschooling works, and it works for a very diverse and broad type of student and family. Homeschoolers don't have to fit into any one stereotype, into any one box, any one type of learning. They come from all different backgrounds and they have different goals. And homeschooling, they can achieve their goals through homeschooling. Homeschooling is not a roadblock to academic success, to career success, to social success. Homeschooling is a vehicle to get our students and our children launched into this community and being contributors to the society that they're living in.
One of the things Renee and I really wanted to do with this series is to present homeschooling as a valid and exciting option for people, but only as an option. We are not against public or private schools. In fact, we both view them as essential. And when we are talking and we get very excited about homeschooling throughout the series, I hope that you'll keep in mind that we said this clearly, that we of course value schools. We very much value teachers. We're teachers ourselves. And we value the different positive things that will come from each of these situations. But the fact is that people have come in and out of homeschooling in school for as long as I've been homeschooling. There tends to be this idea that homeschooling is some kind of box that people enter and they never leave. But actually, in the programs that Renee and I have run at Consortium, we have seen many, many hundreds of children leave public or private school, come homeschool for a few years, and go back as their needs of their family came together. Surprisingly, there's a fair number of families who just for junior high want to homeschool their children. There's people who want to homeschool their children just when they're young and then have them go to high school. Any situation that you could think of, people are coming in and out of homeschooling. Of course, there's always been a group of people that homeschool all the way through, but it's really a large percent that are moving back and forth. And if you are at home watching this and homeschooling because of COVID and you might feel discouraged, I also want to just throw out there that people have been homeschooling for the 25 years I've been homeschooling, sometimes because they wanted to homeschool and they loved homeschooling, but sometimes because situations made it their best option at the time. They moved a lot. I have a very close friend who they had a business and the business was at night and on the weekends, and they homeschooled because they wanted to see their children during the day. Sometimes there's a illness in the family, or a child has an illness, or a child has anxiety problem. There's like a lot of reasons that people choose to homeschool for a period of time. So Renee and I definitely do not want to give the impression that we think that homeschooling is the only answer for everything. Just like probably we don't want people to think that homeschooling couldn't be the answer for some people. So one thing that Renee and I believe in is social homeschooling. And so Renee was involved in a number of homeschooling groups, but primarily in the Hudson Valley Consortium and Co-op. I've had two sort of smaller group homeschools in my home, first with my older kids and then with my younger kids, where it was like 20 to 30 people. So and then the situation in these smaller groups is that each parent will teach something, or sometimes you bring someone in. In the group that I was in Michigan, we, for example, for the younger kids, we brought in kinder music and we brought in an art teacher because we all were focusing on the older kids. But I've also run a fairly large homeschooling group in Michigan, where we hired all the teachers. And so what happens is, just for a day, kids come in and they get specific things that their parents feel like are easier taught with a teacher. So it could be public speaking, it could be math, it could be that your homeschool group does enrichment. For the last 14 years, I've been running consortium, Hudson Valley Consortium. And one thing I love about that program is that it combines many choices. So with 200 students, there are enough people that you can teach all levels of math. You can teach a lot of enrichment. You can offer college classes in one situation. You can have debate. You can have mock trial. Whatever it is that you want to get can all be in one day, and you pick it. I think that, again, this stereotype that homeschoolers never leave their home is just very surprising that it's still going on. But another thing that keeps happening is people sort of believe on some level that people who homeschool don't end up going to good colleges, or they don't end up they're unemployed forever. There's all kinds of sort of misinformation or disinformation out there. But having had the pleasure and the blessing of mentoring and counseling the parents of these hundreds and hundreds of students over 20 years, wow. Renee and I have both come to realize that really there's almost no job that I can think of that as a career option, there isn't someone I know in homeschooling who's made it happen. As a side note, obviously homeschoolers get into Ivy League schools, they get into all schools anymore, they get amazing scholarships too, but just to stick with the idea that homeschooling works, let's just talk about the people I know, former students of mine, who are in many, many careers. So we have people who have gone to med school and they're practicing doctors, or that are in med school right now. We have nurses, we have nurse practitioners. We have a few people who've gone into the armed services. We have people who are teachers in public and private schools. Really, there's a lot of people who also choose to work for nonprofits. But all of these things are kind of interesting, right? I mean, these are all students who are going out and picking a life where they're serving the community, they're helping their world become even better. So that's not it, though. We have someone who is an architect. We have electricians. We have plumbers. We have contractors. We have people in human resources. We have people doing PR. We have people who are X-ray technologists, graphic designers. We have chemists. We have biologists. We have people in law. We have a number of people in business. We have a lot of engineers, like, I don't know, 15, maybe 20, a lot of people that have gone into engineering. We have chefs. We have a number of people who have opened their own business. And really interestingly, the fabulous young man who is editing this for us is a former member of Consortium who has won awards, has done a fantastic job with his own business in film. So the thing is that homeschooling works. Homeschooling works well. There is no one job with homeschooling. There is no dead end with homeschooling. There's just endless options. Another sort of false stereotype that people seem to be under is that homeschooling is this closed, secretive community or something. And actually, it's not. Homeschoolers have a kind of homeschooling village that is happening that people just don't seem to realize, where there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of things going on, where there's group activities, there's people going back and forth, there's people asking questions. And really, I guess it's in the spirit of the homeschooling community that Renee and I decided to take the time to make these videos, because we knew that there's a lot of people out there homeschooling for the first time, or who may be deciding to homeschool for the first time, that we particularly wanted to offer this information in hopes that it might help them in a variety of ways. But also, as part of the community, we always are going to be open to helping other people that homeschool. There's so many ways that homeschoolers reach out to each other and form this community. The Hudson Valley Consortium is the biggest homeschooled group and organization in the Capital District. And if you have questions, or you find yourself thinking that you would like to know what options are out there, you're always welcome to reach out to them. Renee is now the leader of that group, as I have retired, as all my children are in college now, so I'm on to other adventures. But homeschoolers are out there, and they're happy to answer your questions, and they're happy to help you figure out what you need to know, even if they don't know the answers. On that note, if you do find yourself in a situation where you're interested in homeschooling longer, there's just a couple things that we wanted to say from the beginning. It's not always obvious to everybody that the rules for homeschooling vary dramatically from state to state. So for example, I started homeschooling in Michigan, where there were really almost no rules at all, and moved to New York, where there were huge number of rules. New York is one of the places with the most rules for homeschooling. And so you have to figure out in your state how to homeschool legally, which is not as overwhelming or difficult as it sounds. But one of the best ways you can do it, if you don't live in New York, where we can give you advice, is that you can join the Homeschool Legal Defense League. It's been around for a long time. It doesn't really cost that much per year. They offer a lot of different services to homeschools, but they'll also help walk you through what you need to do to talk to your school district. I think that there's a lot of people in homeschooling who end up in this sort of adversarial role against their school district, or against what they think that their school district wants from them in states that have these requirements. But I wanted to say, moving from a state with really almost no rules at all regarding homeschooling, and coming here, I had a lot of trepidation. But my experience with both the school districts that I've lived in, 2 different school districts in New York, because we bought a different house partway through, has been that they were delightful. I really have had no problems. And so I encourage you to go into your relationship with your school district with that idea. You know, I have found mine to both be very helpful. They were both very accommodating. The school districts, I was able to get letters for all my children. So it's that's probably a topic for another day, but just make sure that you have figured out how to homeschool legally. And it's not as difficult as you might think, but it may involve that your child has to do a certain amount of testing. It may be that you have to fill out some paperwork once a year or 4 times a year, but really all states at this time have made it so that homeschooling is just not that hard to do legally. And you always have, either here locally, you can certainly contact the Hudson Valley Consortium for advice, but you've always got that bigger organization too. But just as one homeschooler to the other, it's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Consortium is in a kind of different group of homeschool groups, and they kind of break down into 2 categories. There's some like Consortium in New York, there's LEA, that are not-for-profits or nonprofits. They're run by parents who are actually homeschooling. And the idea of the group is just simply to help people keep homeschooling longer, more effectively, more joyfully. Just to kind of help you be thinking about it, there's other homeschool groups that are out there that are about a particular curriculum that are for profit. And so those tend to be pushing one particular curriculum. So the difference would be if you went to Consortium or there's other things like Consortium. You would be offered a myriad of courses that you could then fit into your particular homeschooling. So if you go to Consortium, you would find yourself looking at it and thinking, oh, I see that there's math at different levels. I see that there's an accessible science, there's science, and there's advanced science, whatever. Like, there's also going to be classes that are just for enrichment. There's going to be different ways of looking at a lot of different things there. It would be the same if you went to a LEA program where, whatever is offered. So even though, one of them might be costing money, it's still, Consortium is still a nonprofit. The money goes to the teachers. But there's another kind of homeschool group that's around a curriculum. And so those tend to be saying, you have to take our curriculum. So we're going to do X, Y, Z, and we're all on this same path together. Occasionally those are not for profit, but often they're around a scheme where people are making money for you to join. So you may choose that, you may love that, but it's kind of good at the beginning when people are talking to you and you're new to homeschooling to kind of get that separate in your mind. Is this a business that's making money on homeschooling? Which, that's the American way, but still that person might have a little different motivation in trying to convince you that it's going to work for you. Or is this a program that is nonprofit and has a lot of different options for you, for different learners, people with different learning styles, people who have different ideas about education?